Well, good morning again, everyone. Again, welcome. You know, that last song there, that is my prayer, that I could be a man of God. And when I get up here, I'm not here as a leader, but like Paul, I say, follow me as I follow Christ. Because it's not about me, it's not about this church, it's about Christ. So we're going to pick up where we left off. We started this journey with Daniel through the book of Psalms here. We went through Psalms 143 the last couple of weeks, and we talked about some of the things that David walked through, but more importantly, what God was doing in David's life through all of that. So today we want to kind of just do a recap of 143. You know, it started out in 143 of hear my prayer. That's where he was starting out. And then you remember how that chapter ended? David proclaiming, for I am thy servant. So today we're going to continue because in 143 he was completely overwhelmed. And by the time we get through with this journey of walking with Paul as fellow travelers, we're going to see him go from overwhelmed to one who worships. And that's where we want to be. And that's why we need to focus so much on worship. You know, but again, you know, there in the end of 143, he says, I am thy servant. That wasn't just the end of a prayer. That was the restoration of his perspective. God was able to change David's vision. The enemy was still there. He was still in a dark place. But all of a sudden, he's seeing it through a different perspective. And that's what we've got to do, is we've got to find the perspective that God is trying to show us. And again, that's what is behind these notebooks. As God brings something to you, as God illuminates a truth, write it down so that years from now, our kids, our grandkids, they can go through these and go, oh, wow, this is what God was showing Grandma or Grandpa. That's pretty neat. So we can leave a legacy even beyond what we are and who we are. But you got to see here that everything we've seen so far, it points toward the greatest act of divine revelation in history. God not only spoke through the prophets, okay? He didn't merely just reveal himself through creation. No, we serve a God who came himself. And that's what we noticed last week in Psalm 143. He pursued David. He talked with David. He didn't just stand at the end of the road and say, hey, come on, David, you'll make it. Keep going, keep trying. No, he went down and met David where David was. And today he wants to meet us where we are. See, salvation, like everything else, begins with God. And that's the mindset we're going to have to develop, is every single thing begins with God and ultimately ends with God. See, we have a God who came down to us. The Word became flesh and dwelt among us. We're seeing the foreshadowing of that in the New Testament right here in the Psalms as David walks through this journey. Then we go into Psalm 144. So 143, he's in the valley. It's deep, it's dark, he's having trouble. He begins to see differently. He sees God differently. Now he's ready. God has got him prepared for the battle. And in Psalm 144, we go into the battle. But look how it starts. If you'll start there in verse 1. Blessed be the Lord my strength, which teaches my hands to war and my fingers to fight. My goodness and my fortress, my high tower, and my deliverer, my shield, and he in whom I trust, who subdueth my people under me. Lord, what is man, that thou takest knowledge of him? Or the son of man, that thou makest account of him? Man is like to vanity. His days are as a shadow that passeth away. So I want you to see something here. David is starting into battle, but does he talk about the battle? The very first word out of his mouth is blessed. Blessed is the Lord. Okay? Blessed is the Lord. He's focused on God. He's not focused on the battle. He's not focused on the enemies. He's focused on his God. So what is God really revealing about himself here? As we continue on in this journey with David, we're reminded nothing's disappeared. The armies are still there. But David sees more than the enemy now. He sees the warrior behind the battle. And that changes everything. So the first 4 verses here, we're going to see who God is and who we are. And we're going to look at this as David. We're walking along beside David, and he's telling us this story. And he's saying, blessed be my Lord. And then he gets down to the verses here, 3 and 4, and he talks about what is man that thou takest knowledge of him. But before we get there, see, before David can learn to fight, he learns to bless first. See, isn't that backwards from the way we do things in our culture? If we win the victory, then we're going to praise God. But in the middle of the battle, he's praising God. Because it has nothing to do with gratitude. It has nothing to do with, Lord, I thank you for taking care of my enemies. It's no, Lord, I know who you are now, and I worship you. Blessed be the Lord. See, before God trains David's hands, God captures David's heart. Before God changes David's ability, God changes David's vision. You see how it all comes back to God. God reveals himself as the warrior who prepares his people. Notice here who performs every action. He said, blessed be the Lord, my strength, who leadeth, my goodness, my fortress, my high tower, my deliverer, my shield. Everything he does points back to God. David knows he can't do this in and of his own strength, and we can't do it in and of our own strength. We have to look to someone higher. Everything still begins with God. David understands he contributes nothing to this list. He's just being used by God. Even his ability to fight comes from God. His ability to be the ruler and the king comes from God. Now think about it. If you're King David, if I was King David, I'd be a little bit arrogant. I'm the king. I can have anything I want. And in fact, we see David kind of get into that a little bit with Bathsheba and some other things. But God changes his vision. See, he's going to equip us to do his work. So therefore, there's nothing we have to worry about as long as we follow God. Make sure his to-do list is our to-do list. This principle echoes throughout Scripture. See, Moses couldn't lead his people out of Egypt. Gideon couldn't defeat the Midianites. David, think about him standing in front of Goliath. The whole army's like, no, we can't do this. And David goes, wait a minute, I've got a God who can. Let me show you how this is done. The apostles, they couldn't even evangelize the world. And folks, we here today, we cannot accomplish God's mission unless God first equips his people. That's you and I. And God is equipping us. The fields are ripe for harvest. See, the God will always supply what the traveler lacks. There's been several times throughout the New Testament where Christ sends them out and tells them, don't take anything extra with you, because he knows he's going to provide along the way. Old Testament, he sent Abraham to a land. He's going to send us places and we're going to go, wait, God, I don't have the provisions for that. I don't have go and I'll take care of it. I've had this happen in my personal life. When I was going through Bible college, We went to Chicago for a week of training with FEMA for disaster recovery and relief. That was 3 weeks before 9/11. When 9/11 hit, it was just like God said, this is what I prepared you guys for. Rally the troops and get to New York. I was like, Lord, I've got a job. I've got 3 kids to take care of. I can't do this. He said, go. Okay, yes, Lord. We went, boots on ground at ground zero for several weeks. Okay, when I came back, I didn't know if I was going to have a job or not, because when I left, I told the boss, I said, look, I've got to go do this. I said, if you have to fire me, I completely understand. I have to go. I was hauling freight at the time. When I came back, I called him and I said, do I have a job? He said, yep. He said, get back up here. I said, well, I appreciate it. What he didn't tell me was that, yes, he was going to fire me. And I understand. He's a boss. He's a businessman. But every man on that dock said, you fire him and we walk out. God already had it taken care of. I didn't even know it. God will equip you before He sends you. You may not know it, though. It's His job to equip. It's our job to be obedient. But notice here the progression. Psalms 143, David says, teach me to do thy will. But then in 144, he said, he teaches my hand to war. David asked to be taught. And isn't that what we learned? That we don't want just the knowledge. We want to understand the knowledge. We need God to teach us. So for David, prayer has become experience. Hope has become confidence. And that's exactly what spiritual growth looks like. See, God does not merely send His people into battle. He prepares them for the battle before they ever arrive. Many of us are headed to a battle right now we know nothing about. That's why God is preparing us. That's why we go through things we go through, because God's like, you are going to need this. Take notes. You're going to need this. Or how about this? The God who restores our vision in the valley. Now, see, we talked about that in the valley. That's not the great place to be, is it? But if that's where God restores our vision, that's where we want to be. So the God who restores our vision in the valley is the same God who trains our hands on the mountain. So 143, we're down in the valley. 144, we're climbing the mountain. And we're going to get to a ridge line, and we're going to see this beautiful, majestic vista with David. But in 143, we see that there's revelation first. God has to reveal Himself to us first, then we respond. He revealed Himself to David. David responded. And then from there, we continue over into Psalms 144 here. And verses 3 and 4, they become even more striking. Because after beholding the greatness of God, David immediately sees the smallness of man. Think about this. His vision was on himself. His vision was on the enemy. But God showed him how infinite He is. And all of a sudden, he realizes it's not just David who's small. It's all of mankind that's small compared to an infinite God. See, at one point, David looked up and he could see the enemy in front of him. But once he got a vision of who God is, he looked beyond the enemy and he sees the entire horizon lined up. You remember when Gideon went into battle? God opened their eyes and they saw just this immense army. Now imagine beyond that is God in all His infinite. What would we have to be afraid of? How could we not, as David here, how could we not worship God once we get a vision of who He really is? See, most sermons are going to take these verses here and they're going to treat them, kind of like an interruption. David had just proclaimed God is his rock, his fortress, his deliverer, his shield, his high tower. And then suddenly he says, Lord, what is man that thou shouldst acknowledge him? What he is saying is, Lord, I just got a glimpse of who you are. And because of who you are, what are we? Why would you care for us? He understands, and his gratitude expands so much. See, it's the inevitable response to seeing God clearly. When David finally sees this up on the mountaintop, he turns and he sees the vista and he sees the glory of God. And as travelers with David, that's what we're here to learn, the glory of God. So God reveals both his greatness and our dependence in this one section here, these two verses. Okay? Notice the order here. David does not begin by thinking about himself. He begins by beholding God. So when we're down in the valley and we start to woe is me, and we've all been there, that's when we need to go, wait a minute. My vision's messed up here. Lord, what do I really need to see here? Show me what you would have me to know. And see, only after seeing that does David rightly see himself. All of a sudden he realizes, oh, I am nothing. And that's okay because I serve a God who is everything. We see that in Isaiah. When Isaiah, he sees the Lord high and lifted up. And what does Isaiah say? Woe is me. Isaiah got a glimpse of who God was, and he was like, woe is me. Isaiah began to understand. Then we see Job. And we well know what Job went through. He lost his family. He lost his animals. He lost everything. And then he lost his health. And his wife even said to him, curse God and die. But Job said, I abhor myself and repent in dust and ashes. Because he knew who God was. He got a glimpse of God even through all that. What about Peter when he witnessed Christ's power? You know, there was a verse in there that always bothered me. Jesus is talking to Peter, and Peter says, depart from me, for I am a sinful man, O Lord. And I was like, wait a minute, this is the King of Kings, Lord of Lords, creator and sustainer of the universe, and you're telling him to go away? And I never understood it until I understood God. Peter is saying, you are such a good and glorious God that I can't even be in your presence, even on my best day. So he says, depart from me, for I am a sinful man, O Lord. See, none of these men became more self-conscious first. First, they had to be more God-conscious. They had to see God first. Then God revealed to them who they are. Again, isn't this just the opposite of our modern culture? Our modern culture that says me first, me, my, mine. Our culture tells you, discover yourself. Do whatever makes you happy. We can see what that's done to our world, can't we? Everyone's wanting to make themselves happy and go do whatever they want to. Let me ask you this. How many of them are actually happy? I mean, I see a lot of angry, bitter people out there. They don't seem happy to me. Just doing things their own way. We will never be happy. We will never be satisfied until we understand who God is. Because He created us to be in relationship with Him. See, the knowledge of self is always downstream from the knowledge of God. If we don't have the proper knowledge of God, we will never understand who we are. And if we never understand who we are, there is no way to happiness. You can call it what you want to. I've talked to too many people in my life who've been tied up with, you name it, drugs, alcohol, marriages, jobs, great jobs, CEO of a company, miserable person. Thought being a CEO would make him happy. No, it's just money. It's just a company. There's something beyond that. See, this reinforces what we're talking about here as the foundational principle of our journey here. Everything begins with God. David's question, Lord, what is man? You notice what he didn't ask? Lord, who am I? Lord, I'm King David, remember? Lord, I've got all the military, look at all the badges on my suit jacket here. I've got all these medals. No. Once he realizes who God is, it's not even about David. It's about all of man. Who are we? But here's the thing. David doesn't ask this because he's depressed. David doesn't see God and realize, oh, well, I'm nothing. I might as well just give up. No. Just the opposite. He is amazed at God. He is overwhelmed by who God is. Now, do you see the difference? In Psalm 143, he was overwhelmed by the circumstances, by the army around him, by the darkness he was going through. Now he's overwhelmed by God and who God is. That makes such a difference. See, he's not saying, I am nothing. No, what he is saying is, why would the Creator notice me? See, here's the big difference. He's not calling out to God out of desperation anymore. But now it's out of grace and gratitude. He says here, man is like to vanity. The Hebrew idea there, it carries a sense of breath, mist, vapor. Okay? Something that's here one minute and gone the next. Kind of like on a cold morning when you're outside and you breathe out. You see this fog and then it's gone. He's saying that's what our lives are. 1 minute we're here, 1 minute we're gone. David has spent years building kingdoms. He has built armies. He's won victories. He has subdued enemies. He has lost friends. But now he's saying, you know what? Life is only a breath. All of that's kind of meaningless. But notice again, this is not despair here. This is understanding. This is his new perspective. See, in 143, he's calling out to God in despair. Now he's calling out because he has the proper perspective of who God is. Those are two very different overwhelmed. And of the two, I would rather have the second one. See, despair loses hope altogether. And that's kind of where he was starting out. But see, now he no longer is speaking like a defeated man. He is speaking like a worshiper of the high God. That makes all the difference in the world. Let's continue on here, and we'll pick up there in verse 5. Bow thy heavens, O Lord, and come down. Touch the mountains, and they shall smoke. Cast forth lightning, and scatter them. Shoot out thine arrows, and destroy them. Send thine hand from above. Rid me, and deliver me out of great waters. From the hand of strange children, whose mouth speaketh vanity, and their right hand is a right hand of falsehood. Something fascinating happens next. Okay? David has just contemplated two realities. How great God is, and how astonishingly small man is. Not just David, all of man, all of mankind. If the psalm ended there, we might expect some quiet reflection. But David proudly prays, bow thy heavens, O Lord, and come down. Why would he pray that? Because when we truly know God, we know who God is. And we're no longer hesitant to ask him for help. Just like your kids. They know who mom and dad are. They know where to go to get the help. Doesn't matter the circumstances. Mom and dad can fix it. I'm here to tell you, whatever the circumstance is, God will fix it. God can fix it. But there's more to it than that. He has moved from a restored vision to a confident dependence in Psalm 144 here. You see the transformation in David? He no longer asking as one who doubts whether God hears. He is asking as one who knows the character of the God he is addressing. You see the difference? I think this is where we need to take a pause on our mountain trip. We need to set up camp again. We need to reflect on this week. We need to get the image of God and who He truly is to us. So this week, I encourage you to do that. But I said I was going to share something with you here. And this is the page that I put in here. It's going to be up here on the screen. I had intended to have these printed off. I will have them next week. The reason being, I'm actually going to add 2 more items to this next week. But this is the Christian life as we know it. God reveals Himself. We behold who He is. Then our vision changes. Our trust grows. Our obedience becomes joyful. Our life becomes worship. And then we understand who God is. Like I said, next week we're going to add a couple more items to that. But I want you to think about the Christian life. Is this what God has revealed to you that is in your life, or is this where we need to head? What is God revealing about Himself to you? Next week we're going to finish up this. We're going to learn about David singing a new song. And why would David be singing a new song? We're going to cover all that. And then at the end of that chapter, we're going to find out what it means to live the way the kingdom living was meant to be. So I hope everyone can be back next week. If not, just like this week, we're going to have it online. You can go see it. But here's something I want you to do. Between now and next week, as you catch this vision of God, go share that with somebody. And say, hey, come to church with me. You got to hear about this journey we're on. We're walking with David. We're learning as he learned what God is revealing to David and what God is revealing to us. Let me tell you about it. Then bring them up here. Join us next week. So every journey requires a step. The next step. David is on a journey. We're on a journey. For some of you, that next step, you need to ask God about. Some of you know what it is, you just haven't taken that step. Some of you, maybe it's a burden you need to lay down that you have been carrying, and God is saying, I need you to let go of that. Let me take care of that, and I will bless you. For some of you, you may never have started this journey with Jesus Christ. Today is the day of salvation. If you would like someone to pray with you, here in just a minute we're going to sing a song. And if you would like someone to pray with you, I would be deeply honored to pray with you. If not, just grab someone around you or just come up here by yourself. The front is always open. God is always listening. And He's always going to be there for that next step in your journey. Remember, God meets us where we are. We don't have to go chase Him. Wherever you are, stop and say, Lord, I need your help. And I promise He'll be there. If everyone will stand.